Did you know that the DNA of all people on the planet is 99 the same? Just think about this amazing fact. Despite skin color, gender, body weight and height, we are almost identical at the genetic level. And looking at people who are completely different from each other, you involuntarily ask yourself a logical question. What is this 1% that creates such striking differences, giving us both external and internal individual characteristics? The answer is obvious. This is our immortal soul, which completely changes the rules of the game, and being the subtle root cause of everything, affects our personality and body. Do you still doubt that this is really the case? Then answer a simple question. For what reason do people grow up in the same family and with the same biological parents who are completely different from each other? After all, it is obvious that a wheat seed grown under the same conditions will always produce similar shoots. Why does this rule not work with a person? And how do children who have received the same genetic information from mom and dad end up with huge internal differences? At the same time, even if we are talking about twins who grow up in the same environment from the first moment, in adulthood they will always differ significantly in character and behavior. And now attention, a question. Are you and your sisters and brothers very similar to each other? Of course, we have some similar external features, but in fact we are so different that 99% of our identity is out of the question, despite our close family ties. Perhaps such a result will seem strange and illogical, but this is the pattern. The secret lies in the fact that our souls are absolutely unique and are at different levels of their evolutionary development. We are surrounded by the real world with its own laws, orders, norms, principles of action, but each person, having a unique psyche and personality, perceives it in his own way. Everything that surrounds a person looks, feels and is perceived by him differently from how the same thing is perceived by any other person. Of course, something can cause similar emotions, such as joy or sadness, but even these emotions are common to all people. Each person will feel differently, with different intensities, with different sensations in the body, with different features, tones, admixtures of other senses, and so on. Even such phenomena, at first glance, are common to all people as color. Each person perceives individually. It is also important to note here that we ourselves, in different moods, perceive the same objects, events, surroundings, and phenomena differently. What is seen in a good mood in one way, the same in a bad mood will look completely different. Due to the individual and unique perception of the surrounding world, each person lives in his own unique world, which exists in his psyche. For example, when we enter a room, everything we see, feel, smells, feelings, emotions, all this is our unique world. No one else has ever had it. There is not now and there will not be. Everyone lives in their own unique world. No one will ever be able to penetrate into it and see the world through our eyes, just as we will never be able to see the world through the eyes of another person, feel his feelings, feel his emotions with all their complex shades. For example, you are sitting at a table in the kitchen. There is an old sugar bowl on the table, and your friend comes into the kitchen. Both you and he see this sugar bowl, but both see it differently. For a friend, this is the most ordinary sugar bowl, which can certainly evoke his own associations, thoughts and feelings, but for you it is a sugar bowl with memories, sensations, emotions and images from the past. How mom poured sugar from it into tea after a walk when you were a child. How the grandfather, who is no longer alive, poured sugar out of it and talked about his youth. And it turns out that there is one sugar bowl, but in fact there are two of them, yours and your friend's. And these are different sugar bowls. But the sugar bowl is a very modest example. The kitchen itself, other rooms, the house, and everything else in this world, including all complex concepts and meanings, we see, feel differently with another person, different emotions, different memories, different associations, different feelings. As a result, there is also a misunderstanding when it seems that the same phenomenon causes different reactions and actions of different people. That's because the phenomenon is like one thing, but reflected in people's minds, it is perceived completely differently by different people. And for one person, this phenomenon can be seen as a blessing, while for another it is something sad and bad. Every person subconsciously strives to understand other people and also subconsciously strives to be understood by other people. But full mutual understanding is an unattainable ideal. As a rule, friendship is a state when the difference between the inner worlds of two people is not as great as with other people. It is the similarity of the inner worlds that defines such a thing as friendship. A relationship in which there is mutual understanding should be treasured, because this is a very rare and valuable phenomenon. If a person does not have friends, then he is doomed to experience a feeling of loneliness, being in his unique inner world and not having people whom he himself would understand and who would understand him. And since you and I know about the basic rule of the material universe, which says everything in the world moves from thin to dense, and in no other way, such a significant difference between you and your sisters and brothers no longer raises any questions. Even though we were born and raised in the same family, souls that came from a common source carry the closest connection with each other. They are called native souls. Imagine that at a certain moment a certain energy reaches its maximum possible development and its next stage is the division into several parts. This is how several independent energies are separated from a common source, which remain interconnected with each other and with the source, which, in turn, comprehends the experience of a new development through simultaneous residence in its different parts. In fact, we all came from a common single source, but the path of endless evolutionary development, our closeness to each other is changing. It can be compared with the kinship of brothers and sisters, from relatives to cousins, second cousins, and so on. The closest is the family connection, which is directly from the parents. There are an infinite number of such examples, and here the question is not earthly, a family or love affair, but in a spiritual one. In the place of mother and daughter, father and son, there may be strangers by blood, but close in spirit. Each soul contributes to the common piggy bank. The quality of each energy is reflected in the quality of the total energy and, as a result, in the quality of energy of everyone who is in the common field. This is how the interconnection ring works. From the total energy individually to each part of it and from each energy to the total, then repeated from the total to each. That is why joint and individual development takes place in parallel, and, if necessary, an enhanced breakthrough, with joint incarnation missions.